right. Well, so welcome everyone to the fourth of our 8 sessions in our outreach series. My name is Christine Krieger, and I am the professional development consultant for the Colorado State Library, and I am your tech support for today's session. We are going to ask that you keep your video off and remain muted until we get to questions. You can ask questions throughout via the chat, and then we probably will have time at the end if people wanted to unmute or turn video on to ask questions. So I think without further ado, I am thrilled to introduce staff from the High Plains Library and your fabulous presenters for today. We have Brittany, Lindy, and Jamie. So I'll turn it over to you all.
Hi everyone, welcome to the virtual services session. I am Brittany Rains, the Move Manager. My pronouns are she, hers, and hers.
Hi, I'm Jamie Lowen. I'm the Virtual Services Supervisor. My pronouns are he, him, and his.
And I'm Lindy McCaleb. I'm an outreach librarian, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
So before we get started, we would like to take a moment of mindfulness. High Plains Library District acknowledges with respect that the land we are on today in Weld County is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations and peoples. This was also a site of trade, gathering, and healing for numerous other Native tribes. We recognize the Indigenous people as original stewards of this land and all the relatives within it, and we further acknowledge the forceful removal of the populations after the Medicine Lodge treaties and atrocities such as the Sand Creek Massacre. Our intentions are based on our desire to ground and to acknowledge and support a state of change. We bring our increased awareness and consciousness into this space now and into the spaces we inhabit. We believe this land acknowledgement is a process of deepening our relationship to personal power and land. We acknowledge that we are strangers on stolen land. With this acknowledgement, we are strangers. With this acknowledgement, we bring energy that infuses presence, clarity, and deep longing to be in alignment. Again, thank you for joining us today. This is our 4th session in a series of 8 trainings focused on outreach librarianship. We encourage questions as we go. Please put these in the chat and we will monitor them. So for today's objectives, we hope that you learn what our virtual library is and how it functions, additional virtual services that are provided by our entire Move department, how we move the virtual library to working from home, and how we evaluate our virtual services. Virtual library is a library that has no direct face-to-face contact with patrons. And because of this physical environment, it is a lot more informal and allows for fun and welcoming environment. So you can see in these pictures, we have games, a coffee station, and then also it is set up for easy communication. So we have desks that all face each other. That way, when we have calls or chats that maybe new staff are unfamiliar with or have questions, it does allow for them to talk to each other. Our virtual library is made up of 1 virtual service supervisor, and that is Jamie, and then 4 full-time library associates. 3 are bilingual in Spanish, and this is definitely something we look for when we hire staff. Because of the amount of telephone and chat help that they give. We also support our virtual library with outreach librarians. So if there are longer reference questions that need to be answered or follow-ups to existing requests, that can be routed to our outreach librarians. And our virtual library is housed inside of our FAR library batch as a home base. We have, during the pandemic, moved stations to home as well.
Okay, hi. Again, my name is Jamie Lowen, and I'm the supervisor for the virtual library. I'll give you a little overview of what we do, and feel free to chat questions as we go if you want to. So the virtual library was created in about 2011 because we had several issues we wanted to address and resolve. The main one was providing consistent messaging from the district instead of getting, answers or messaging from several locations. We wanted it centralized and a consistent message going out. And the other issue was we wanted to free up frontline staff from having to answer the telephone all day long. So we assist with that, and we free them up to do in-person customer service by taking all the repetitive calls and emails and chats that they would have gotten. In addition to that, we provide internal customer support as well. So we answer questions from patrons and we answer questions from internal staff. We act as sort of like a switchboard and light reference, light tech help. In addition to all that, we do intranet and website content control, and we'll go more into detail in the next few slides, but that's primarily everything we do. So our focus is primarily on non-in-person contact customer support service. So telephone, email, chat. And again, like I stated earlier, we field anything that comes in that is not through the door of a location. And out of those, our main point of contact is via telephone. So we're the first point of contact when a patron calls. And what we do is we field and we answer as many of those calls as possible. And if we can't answer those calls, we will pass it along to staff who we think could better address the patron's question and provide assistance. And same with any other question submitted via any other format, either by webmail or by chat. And the inquiries that come in would be anything that someone in person would get. We assist everything from hours, providing information for hours and operations, hours of operation, location information, light reference assistance, as well as providing support for the rest of the move department, such as library card creation and data entry, and let's see, what else do we do? Oh, and as I mentioned, district intranet and public website content control. So patron assistance via telephone, webmail, chat, everything you'd expect. Hours of operation, account status, item material overdues, ILLs, renewals, lost items. We assist with program information and registration. We do light tech help. And of course, we answer reference questions to a certain extent. And we provide similar support for internal staff. We do call transfers, we look up contacts for other staff, we help staff find internal documents, we help with programs and special issues, and we assist with the language line. So web inquiry and chat services. With web inquiry and chat, we provide assistance, everything we would provide assistance with on the telephone. We can do it via email or chat. And the webmail is through FormStack, so they fill out a form and that gets that gets generated into an email, and that goes directly to my group. And they just take turns answering those emails. We also are on chat. Patrons can reach us via chat, and that chat service is through SpringShares, through their LibChat application. And let's see, we field all incoming emails, and we either reply with answers as soon as we can, or we forward that to the staff most likely able to provide the patron with assistance that they need. It's pretty straightforward. I guess the only real difference is with webmail, it provides us a little more time to look something up and type up whatever we need to do. With chat, it's a little more time consuming and labor intensive, because you're basically doing real-time customer service while typing. And it's a little clunkier than talking to them on a telephone, and you don't have the luxury of doing it, having the time to compose an email. But other than that, yeah, chat and webmail services. Virtual reference. We do a lot of virtual reference, and we provide a lot of frontline tech help to both our patrons and internal staff. And similar to reference questions, any branch staff would field, hours, locations, direction, looking up information for patrons and staff. Much of the reference help we provide is for our more popular database offerings. And I would say the bulk of our reference help revolves around some type of tech or database issue, if not account issues. So help with Overdrive, with Hoopla, with Canopy, and pretty much any consumer ebook, laptop, electronic assistance. We're the frontline staff that answers those fields and answers those questions. My staff's pretty familiar with all the databases because of the sheer volume of questions we receive related to databases and electronic consumer devices like ebooks, the Kindle and all that. The more difficult reference questions with databases and all that is forwarded to me. And I, as the librarian for the department, I answer all the database questions. And in relation to that, so any reference question that takes more than about 15 minutes, we try to set up a one-to-one appointment for the patron with a librarian or the staff best suited to answer their question, either in person or virtually. And one of our sort of unofficial jobs is web oversight. Because we are on the website, our public website, and our intranet on a daily basis, and we interact with those platforms all the time, we monitor the sites and the content for freshness. And we basically contact the owner or the person responsible for the information, and we request updates. And that's anything from internal phone lists to hours that are posted on our website to any other information, tax information, and all that.
So a little bit of information about the other virtual services that we provide. And first of all, I want to apologize for my voice. I'm just recovering from a cold. So the MOVE department provides a lot of virtual services outside of the virtual library. We started off doing some virtual programming, some stuff back before the virtual library really was active in what they do now. And a lot of the programs didn't really hit off much, but the experience that the virtual library staff had in that then helped us to be able to recover quickly from the pandemic hitting, so we could provide virtual services almost immediately to our patrons. So we provide some of the virtual programs that we provide include story times, book clubs, and a couple of other activities that we do online, some gaming programs and stuff. We also provide e-card maintenance. During COVID, we removed the 1-month time restriction for almost over a year. And we just reinstated this actually, so that our e-cards only last for a month before they are no longer active. So then patrons have to go into the library to get a physical library card. So the virtual library maintains this. They also help out with database assistance, as Jamie had mentioned. And we also pilot programs for the entire district. The virtual library piloted the work order system that we use now. And over the pandemic, I think that they piloted 2 different phone systems, including the phone system that we use now, as well as helping the branches figure out how curbside pickup was going to work. So they're really great source of kind of beta testing things for the district. The virtual library also manages our public virtual meeting space through GoToMeeting. They helped staff figure this out also. Once the pandemic hit, once we had to start doing a lot more virtual programming, the virtual library then trained staff on how to use GoToMeeting, as well as facilitated public meetings as well. And I see a question in the chat that says, if the virtual card expires, can you get another virtual one easily? Thinking of mobility barriers. And yeah, there's a link on our website where you can sign up for a new card, and you can just keep signing up for one if yours expires. But the idea behind it is to, if people could get into the library, get a physical card, so then they can get a little more access than just digital. We also provide assistance by updating addresses for debt collect that are skip traced. That's something that the virtual library does. And they create preloaded cards for events that the Move staff then goes to. They usually make about 500 preloaded cards a year. This makes things so much easier for us when we're at an event and signing people up for library cards. That way we don't have to go through all of the steps there at the event. And you can go to the next slide, Brittany. All right, and a little more in depth about the virtual programming that we provide. Sorry, there we go. I mentioned before that the virtual library staff started out doing some virtual programming before the pandemic, but it didn't really hit off. Some were hit and miss. This screenshot below to the side is from a Downton Abbey club that we had online. So that was kind of a fun program. But it was a really great experience to have these virtual programs in place, because as soon as the pandemic started, our staff and the staff that were formerly part of the virtual library but had moved on to the branch libraries were able to quickly adapt and start providing virtual programs almost immediately. We started to do story times almost daily during the pandemic, especially during that initial quarantine that everyone had. And we still continue to do virtual programs now throughout our branches online still. The original virtual programming that we did also included some book reviews and some e-resources, instructions, and the slide before when it had the Hoopla explained, that was something that the virtual library had created. And then we hadn't really done a whole lot more outside of that. But then once the pandemic started, we were able to adapt really quickly and start providing some quality virtual programs very quickly. All right, go to the next slide. I'm going to take a drink 1 second, sorry. All right, so a little bit more about some of our virtual story times. We had one librarian who was great. As soon as the quarantine started, he provided a daily story time for a while there, and then it got moved to once a week. So it was a Facebook Live story time that we provided consistently, and it was really great because We had just started getting our Facebook page off at this time. And so in March 2019, we started, or sorry, 2020, we started our Facebook page with 15 followers, and we now have 381 followers, mostly thanks to our story times that we did. One problem that we had encountered from the beginning with our virtual story times, though, was managing publisher permissions, as I'm sure a lot of you have experienced as well. So from the beginning, we were very careful to make sure that we tracked what publishers we were using books from and what permissions they gave, whether they were giving permission to give live story times versus recording story times, and then whether if it was to a recorded, or if it was to a live story time, whether it was to a closed or unclosed group. All of these publisher permissions had different things, and how long you had to wait before you removed the video afterwards. And so we created in our Move department a spreadsheet that then the whole district used to track what permissions we were using and what books we were going to use, and what publishers required what permissions for the virtual story times. It was a really big endeavor, but it really helped out to make sure that we were following copyright restrictions. So in the upper right-hand photo, we have a couple of our puppets. We did some puppet shows that were virtual, which were a lot of fun. And these actually were puppets that lived with the virtual library for a long time, and they had used them for their virtual programming back before the quarantine. So that was a lot of fun. And then as more staff became more comfortable with doing recorded story times and we're able to go back into the building and record these, more staff members, like in the upper left photo, started doing story times as well. So in the bottom photo is our rock star librarian that did all of the live story times for several months, and he did a really great job. And we had another question in the chat here. Oh, where'd it go? That says, I found the publisher's rules so tricky, and I believe Beth shared a spreadsheet. Was it yours? I don't know if our spreadsheet was shared, but we did.
My knowledge, Lindy, that was not our spreadsheet.
Okay.
Our spreadsheet originated before that one was shared out.
Okay.
But we still inquired about getting individual publisher permission. So we would still write the publishers and get that permission granted, and then log those emails that gave us those permissions as well. As part of the process to use that, emails were still supposed to go to publishers.
Thank you, Brittany. So a little bit more about some more virtual programming that we did over the pandemic. We found that some staff weren't as comfortable with doing figuring out publisher permissions, so we started doing some oral storytelling as well, which was actually really great to have some diversity in our stories. And so the upper left photo is from an oral story time that one of our librarians did, where we had an artist draw a picture. It was a Robin Hood story, and the artist drew a picture to accompany it. And so you got to see the picture be created as the story was told, which was really fascinating and great. We also started to do virtual reality story times. So it was really interesting to be able to start to experiment with VR. We got an Oculus VR headset, and we started doing some oral story times with that as well, which is really cool. And that gave us the time and space to explore virtual reality to eventually start to be able to do some programming with VR. And we also started to do some virtual reality community conversations, which were some staff conversations about topics in the community for different months. We did Black History Month, Women's History Month, Developmental Disability Month, where we just sat down virtually and discussed different topics that affected our community. And this virtual reality was really great because it was a way to be able to connect on another level for staff who maybe aren't comfortable being recorded with their faces on a video. All right, you can go to the next slide. And then we also provided virtual tours of our vehicles. This photo up above is a screenshot from a tour that I did of our bookmobile. We actually were part of a couple of different parades virtually with our vehicles. We were part of a Pride parade and then part of the Association of Bookmobile and Outreach Services bookmobile parade as well virtually, which was really fun and a great way to showcase our vehicles. All right, you can go to the next slide.
So working from home, the virtual library transitioned to a work from home model towards the end of COVID. We've been talking about allowing staff to work from home because the nature of the job is all virtual, telephone, web, email, all that. So we have been trying to convince other departments, IT, upper management, to allow a work from home sort of beta testing for the virtual library. We weren't getting too much traction because of the logistics involved, everything from HR to broadband and equipment issues. But then COVID hit and everything changed. So now we are all working from home primarily. The only reason we come in once a week is just for a team cohesion. So we come in every Wednesday for a full shift and everyone meets and gets together. And again, the process of trying to get staff to work from home didn't have much traction until COVID hit. And then once COVID hit, it sort of changed everything. And when COVID hit, oh, can you go back to the last slide, Brittany? Sorry. When COVID hit, what happened was we needed some way to communicate with the patrons because everyone was shut down and no one was working. So virtual library was the only department in the district that stayed open during that initial shutdown. With the assistance of the outreach librarians, we tried to do pretty much everything that we did normally in virtual. And, you know, as you would imagine, we had a ton of issues, everything from equipment issues to broadband issues to software issues. And on top of all that, IT was testing out different phone systems. So during COVID, we basically, in the middle of all that, tested out 3 phone systems from scratch. Okay, next slide, Brittany. Thank you. And right now we do work from home and we've got the procedure and we've got our system down somewhat for the most part, I think. So there are several areas that we needed to focus on: procedures, equipment, and management of the virtual environment and team. The procedures we're still working on, and we're still sort of fine-tuning them right now. And, you know, very simple things to how do I know if staff has logged in, to, you know, how do we keep track of calls, what do we do, and things like, you know, so staff will text me at the beginning of their shift saying simple things like I'm logging in, so I know. And then we have call software, and we changed it. At one point, the phone was ringing all phones, and anyone who was available would pick up the phone. In the virtual environment, that doesn't really work because you can't hear anyone else's phone ringing in the office. So we opted for a round robin system of phone ringing that rings every operator in order fairly. If that operator can't pick up the phone, the next operator picks up the phone. Those are procedural issues that we need to address. And then there are tons of equipment issues. Do we replicate the office for our staff? How does our staff access the internet at home? We decided to buy our library associates. So the virtual library is run by full-time library associates, not librarians. And in our district, library associates don't get their own laptops. But because of the nature of the work, we provided our library associates with their own laptops, keyboards, headsets, and they have to get onto the internet using their own internet, but we also provide large screens for their home. Again, due to the nature of the work, having to have multiple screens open at once, as well as docks, so they can transport their laptop from their home environment to the office environment easily. In the managing the team, we have regular meetings on a weekly basis, virtually through Microsoft Teams. So we just call in and we have a group meeting like we would, but we just do it from our homes, as well as meeting in person now once a week on Wednesdays for an entire shift, just to get that face-to-face contact. Another issue is, how do we train staff? How do we train new staff when we hire them? And that's tricky because we have it's sort of an information dump for new staff. They have to know everything about the district and everyone to be able to connect people and answer questions. So what we do is we train on-site new staff, and we are doing this right now for subs and new staff that come in when we have to replace staff. That new person will come in for 40 hours of in-person training, one-on-one mentoring with one or more virtual library staff, and then they'll transition to a work from home environment like the rest of us. So the evaluation of services, we weren't really keeping track of the data with the old phone system and the old way that virtual library was running. So one of our 2021 goals was to collect and compile and analyze as much data as we could. And we've been doing this for a year. So we collect phone logs, work order logs, email logs, chat logs. And then we just analyze all that and we generate reports that look very similar to that image you see on your screen. And we provide that report monthly to the Move manager, Brittany. And we provide quarterly reports, compiled monthly reports to the director and the board. And we've used this data in the real world it allowed us to shift hours. We realized that the last 2 hours of service that we were providing from 7 to 9 were pretty much dead. We would maybe get a couple of calls on a busy night district-wide. So we basically ended up closing earlier and shifting that staff person to sort of peak busyness hours. And then we decided that for 2022, we'd like to collect qualitative data. So we're creating a survey that we're gonna roll out next year to see how patrons and internal staff like the quality of service they're receiving through virtual library. And we'll see how that goes.
Does anyone have any additional questions about our presentation today?
I have a question. I'll turn on my video so I'm not talking into the void. Hello. So at my last library at Boulder, we had a call center as well, and we handle like the EREF and all of that, our contact center. How do you, since the staff that are working the virtual services though don't work in the branches or in the building, like how do you handle communicating changes in services? And like, I know you said the goal of the contact center was to have like a uniformed answer, but as those little things happen that change within the branches, how do you best like disseminate that information since the staff aren't on site?
Well, I'd like to say we have an amazing way of disseminating information, and all the managers and patron services supervisors are all on the same page, and we're kind of lockstepping. But in reality, it's pretty chaotic. So virtual library pretty much has to know what every branch's, every member library's specific quirks are. And yes, there are overall sort of directives and guidelines that each library goes by. And we as a supervisor, I go to those meetings, I pass that along to my staff. But at the same time, you know, a lot of times managers and supervisors will kind of tweak that and tailor it to their own branch, like you said. And there's no easy way to keep track of that other than we have a ton of spreadsheets with every branch and every location, every manager's specific requirements and little tweaks. And really, I don't know a better way to do it. If you guys know a better way, I'd love to know. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have a brilliant idea at all. It was very challenging when coming back from the closure and reopening the branches, because we started with just Central Branch being open, or Maine, and knowing, like, you know, at Maine we don't have any open seating, but at Meadows we do have seating, and you know, trying to with all of that was
So times that by 14, and that's my
I
life.
can't imagine. I'm very impressed. So.
We do have like our branch audit, which is our big spreadsheet that Jamie is talking about. And ideally, we do like for that to be updated by the managers and sending it out for them to review at least yearly is helpful, but it doesn't always result in updates. It's just really our best effort of getting that information updated. And then as staffing changes as well, our HR department doesn't necessarily let us know when those changes happen, but they do post it on our intranet when people are leaving and when new positions have been added. And a lot of times our virtual library staff just kind of catches that information and updates that branch audit with that very informally. Do we have any other questions?
And do feel free to unmute or turn video on to ask questions, or if you have excellent ideas that you think kind of fit along the lines of evaluation or you know, making sure that the people answering the questions have the right information, etc. Share what you guys are doing. We got 34 people on here who are doing a lot of the same things. So.
And here is our contact information. If you want to follow up with any questions or share additional ideas of what is working for your districts from a virtual standpoint, we would love to hear those as well.
So do you
we
guys
have a question.
Go
sorry.
Go ahead, Lindy.
There's a question here. Do you partner with local organizations to provide virtual programming / services? And Brittany can answer this probably more, but yeah, we do partner a lot with local organizations. We have hosted a lot of organizational meetings on GoToMeeting in the past, but we also work with them to provide, especially during the pandemic, giving them a platform and kind of for like virtual programs. We've worked with outside organizations to provide some good quality programs for our patrons as well. Brittany, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that we also took forward this concept of programming performers, and we've always had a budget for that within our district. And so we continued that in a virtual realm. So as staff got a little burnt out creating their own virtual content, we were able to hire additional partners to do like yoga videos. So we were able to, you know, make booking agreements and things like that, like we normally would. And then we had the ability to use the rights to those videos as well. So that was another way we were able to a little bit share the challenge of always creating virtual content, because it is very time consuming, especially the editing part. So it was very nice to be able to have that partnership with existing partners that we have used in the past for in-person programming as well.
And there's a follow-up question with that. Are any of those in languages other than English? Brittany, do you know this?
To my understanding, we did not have anything that was marketed beyond English. We did have the ability to have a translator in one of our programs, but then it was not utilized. So really making the case for providing them in additional language was a little challenging when we didn't have the usage in it in the one program that we tried it with. It would have been our preference to be able to do that in many languages. However, we have limitations of people on staff that know languages besides English as well.
We in virtual, we partnered with AARP for tax help during the COVID issue, and we basically set up appointments and did all that. But we also, at the very beginning, provided virtual meeting rooms for patrons to host their own meetings for whatever organization that they were a part of. So we would set up the space, do a little light tech help, help them log in, make sure everyone's on, and then sort of act as sort of like background tech support while the meeting was going on for the first 15-20 minutes. And that lasted, we had several people do that, but and then Zoom took over and everyone transitioned to Zoom because it's so much easier than going through the library for most of the time. And for the foreign language, again, for AARP Tax Help, we did help some with using Language Line. But then we would get into, tax advice issues and all that stuff. So we couldn't really go into it that much.
And then another question I see, will the virtual department continue when the pandemic is over? And it will. So it was created before the pandemic. It was just a bit of our saving grace in that sense of it was a service that we could continue. And our full intention is to continue it after the fact as well, because it definitely takes the constant questions of like times and hours and renewals and just checking on library account status away from our frontline staff in the branches. So it really does free up a lot of time. And it's performed by 4 people instead of having many people at the front desk.
Yeah, we'll absolutely continue. And, I think COVID was sort of a blessing for us because, like we mentioned, it accelerated the process of being able to work from home. And now we're 100% home work-based for the most part. And staff love it and we're getting used to it. So yeah, we're here to stay.
And I would have to say a lot of that also came with Jamie's expertise of knowing exactly what to ask for from IT and kind of knowing how the systems worked and how they really didn't work. So when they weren't working, how we could move to new phone systems to really get us the best tools for our staff to use as well. So definitely having somebody with those expertise that can talk what I would consider IT language is very helpful. All right. Does anybody else have any questions?
I don't see any new ones coming in. I will get the archive uploaded and sent out to all attendees and people on the wait list by tomorrow. And then as indicated on the slide, we have the next session coming up will be next Tuesday at the same time, session 5, event services, community conversations, and feedback loop. So I want to thank everybody for attending today, and I want to send a special thanks to our fabulous presenters, Brittany and Lindy and Jamie. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.